Call to order the Capital Improvement Committee of March 14th, 2022 at 10:03 a.m. We're not going to go over minutes today. Lisa's out today, so we're going to get everything that we need today. Patrice is up first for capital, and I don't see her, so we're going to skip over 1 and go right to 2. Kelly, you going to present for the fire? You're going to present?
She'll have, if you want to come up, Kelly, in case I gotta get the computer. So Matt had us put all our projects on SharePoint.
Yeah.
What I did here is I have a request through the 30, through 10, I had a 10-year or 7.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go over those. What I did want to do is get into SharePoint here. So let me just start off with a little statement, but basically, obviously the fire department and ambulance are together, even though we're one department. Our goal is obviously to mitigate fire and emergencies, whether it be hazmat, any type of emergency that can come up. So our goal is to do that and provide the most professional emergency medical care as we possibly can. So we have 2 budgets. I know that Dick is familiar with that, and probably Shirley. So our goal is to do that. The concern that I have as chief is that the town hasn't really been able to keep up with our needs as far as equipment goes. So I just want to put that out there. And if you look at the form I have here, I'll go through all of them, but if you look at FY23, the first thing we're going to go over is Engine 1 in just a few minutes, and that was a subject of discussion last year, and it missed getting funded by, I don't know, 0.3 or something like that of the calculations, which is fine. FY22 is, Engine 1's 23 years old right now. Engine 2, which is a tanker, it's a 2,500 gallon truck. That's going to be, next year it'll be 22 years old. And then if you go down to FY25, you've got a ladder truck. That we got on a grant in 2005. In 2025, that'll be 20 years old. That'll, by NFPA standards, have met its useful life. So that's just an overview of 3 things that we have coming up. Just a ladder alone is like $1.3 million.
It's hard to believe it's that much.
It is. Well, it was $500,000 when we got it on a grant, but prices they've just gone. For instance, Engine 1 we bought in 1999 for $149,000. That truck today is $650,000 or $700,000. So those are just some things I wanted you folks to see. I also wanted you to, I did this one here that has some highlights on it. This is all the grants that that the fire department has applied for and saved the town money on. For instance, the ladder truck 2005 was $500,000. We got radios and pages and radios in 2007, saved the town $68,000. In 2014, we got our self-contained breathing apparatus. That's about a $7,000 or $8,000 piece of equipment you wear on your back to protect your respiratory system for heat and toxic gases. We were able to get a grant for $178,000 to get that. Turnout gear, which is the gear that we wear. Most of that all part on grants. I got a grant in 2015 for $20,000. Very recently, North Brown, they're not even complete up there, but they didn't have adequate water up there. So we compromised with them and said if you put in a cistern, so we'll have water, and provide us with newer hose that is a 1-inch diameter and larger. We'll be able to supply water throughout the whole town, 1,000 gallons more a minute if we can, because it can move water twice as much with just that inch of capacity we gained. So that was about $70,000 we got. The state gave us $100,000 towards our last ambulance because we didn't have completely have the money. DCR gave us some money. I don't know if you guys remember when they gave us $165,000 when they raised the price down and they get some public safety money. We finished our grant so that we could outfit everybody with turnout gear. Then we got two of them through the state. Actually, we even listed one here. Oh no, we got another one. Two through the state. In the past 2 years, Kelly was able to apply for a state grant through the Fire Academy. And so we got like, let's see, there we had
11,700
and then 15,500 this year, right? So the total just grants we've been applied for in the past few years is 1.2, almost $3 million. Then we also got a forestry grant for a forestry truck that we're working on right now. That was well, forestry PPE we applied for. And the forestry grant we got was a truck for a $250,000 grant, which we would get $238,000. We're applying for a hazard mitigation grant to try and get money towards the generator at the fire station and money towards mitigating, making it so we can apply for a lot more other grants and renewing our hazard mitigation plan.
Ken,
So look,
what does it mean when it says application not yet released?
Be applying for it.
Yeah, we're applying for that.
They haven't released the application or the amount that is available for funding.
The grant people haven't released.
Correct.
We met with them last week and they said, hey, this money's going to be available. You guys would be high on the radar because it's not really all that competitive. Not many people are applying for it, so we asked that you apply for it. So just as just wanted to draw a comparison on what we've applied for grant-wise and been able to save the town money. For instance, the PPE, our turnout gear, the town has spent very little money on. That's just the basic needs of the fire department. The basic needs we need to be able to go into a fire and fight the fire. And the same with the SCBA. So it's a little bit concerning that we're not getting funded our basic needs. It's all being done through grants right now. So I just want to preface that way. And hopefully I can articulate so that people see the value and the seriousness of it. And then all in the bottom here is stuff that we've done through capital over the past few years. We did Jaws of Life. My cruiser came through capital. That's 8 years ago. LDH hose we did back in 2015. We got a gear washer to wash the turnout gear a few years ago. And then engine 3 was a debt exclusion back in 2017. So that's that. I'll get into my presentation now. If I can just get my computer.
On that engine 3, did we also, that catch basin tanker or pumper or something like that, was that something for the fire department as well?
No.
That was highway.
Just highway, so what's
Yeah.
the pumper portion of it? What's that?
Oh,
That's the type of vehicle. It's an engine pumper. It's got a pump that pumps water.
No, I get that. So is it a benefit of the highway department or
No,
is that a
just-
benefit of the fire department?
fire. The
That's
pump.
so that's what I was asking.
Engine 3 is just a fire department vehicle. It has no highway department function. I'm sorry.
I'm not even talking about engine 3. I'm trying to ask about the catch basin pumper truck that they bought.
Oh, yeah, that's highway.
That's all highway?
That's all highway.
Okay, yeah, that's all I was trying to find out.
All right, I was just confusing, you know.
Yep, no, that's fine.
It's confusing. So,
Sorry to interrupt.
let me go to, open up my engine 1 presentation.
We'll often refer to an engine as a pumper. That's where I think.
Yeah, that's.
No, we're good on that. Let him move into this thing.
So Matt had sent out his request form. He sort of changed it. Remember the forms we used to fill out, Shirley? He did a different form now. For instance, number 1, it asks, please provide a 1-sentence project of the description. So this is a replacement for engine 1, and it's to be so that we could be in compliance with the National Fire Protection Association 1901, which is the standard for fire apparatus, 2016 edition. The apparatus was a frontline piece of equipment from 1999 when we bought it for $149,000 through 2017. It was our first new engine. So whatever we had, it went out on that call. It was utilized initially for fire suppression, and it responded to a number of very large incidents. The Burnett Mill Fire pumped for over 30 hours drafting water out of the river, and then also large diameter heavy master streams at the Webster Mill Fire that happened back in 2015. And then along with every fire that we had from 1999 to 2017, that truck went to a mutual aid as well. So let's see, I have here that we bought our last pumper 5 years ago, and the truck has been out of service for repairs. Whenever our new truck is out of service for repairs, this truck is the first new truck. It moves up, and it's the first truck to go out if we have our newest truck out for repairs, which just happened. It just happened last week. We had to send it in for repairs. Question 3 is, disclose any legal exposure for failure to threat a property that has occurred and may arise from the project not being funded. So I have here the situation with the truck. Again, it's 23 years old, it's frontline. And really to have that truck frontline at 23 years old is unwise at best. But that's what we have. Let's see here. So it really does, it desires a deeper look into the facts. What would it affect? Obviously, life safety. If the pump were to quit while we had firefighters in fighting a fire interior and the pump quit, that could be catastrophic to the firefighters that are fighting the fire, or any citizens who might be in harm's way as well. I provided you folks with a copy of NFPA 1901. And if you look on the back part of the first page, it talks about apparatus being more than 15 years old, and that if they're more than 15 years old, then they've lost safety upgrades, that technology has changed. For instance, most of us buy a new cell phone every 2 years because the technology changes. The technology changes in fire trucks usually decades apart, 10 years. But if it's more than 15 years old, a lot of the safety features that the trucks that have today, we don't have. If you flip that over to the next page, the first sentence on the top says apparatus that were not manufactured to applicable NFPA fire standards or are over 25 years of age should be replaced. So we're at 23 years old for engine 1. So it's already gone past its useful life and is now into the point where it should be retired. I have here one other thing. I had a copy of something there. I don't have it. Oh, it's this one here. On the top of this page here, it says capital assets of local government suggested useful lives. And it talks about infrastructure and non-infrastructure, but when it gets down to motor vehicles, it's the second category down. It says cars, light trucks, buses, fire trucks. And if you follow it over, the useful life of a fire truck, according to most municipal governments, or many municipal governments, is they should be replaced after 15 years. That's the useful life of a truck. So in Douglas, we've been stretching that a little bit, but I just wanted you folks to be aware of what NFPA requires and some of the features that 1901 captures on the bottom of the page from NFPA 1901. Seatbelts and warning systems applicable in every seat are new or in serviceable condition. Warning lights meet or exceed the current standard. Reflective striping, slip-resistant walking, voltage electrical systems, alternators. and ground stepping lighting meets the current standard. So these are some of a lot of the things that the current apparatus doesn't have. The kicker is that last week, was it last week? Or the week before, we had a leak from engine 1. So we called our repair guy, and he basically looked it over and decided that it needs to be, the pumping needs to be packed. In other words, they have to pull the whole shaft back out. And then he looked it up and he said, I only did that 5 years ago, so I'm going to assume that the box that it fits into is worn and it's moving back and forth. And if that's the case, you know, you're looking at a very substantial repair of a 23-year-old truck. And the first thing he said to me was, how long are you going to keep this in service? So, make a long story short, I have some quotes here I can circulate around. There's 2 scenarios here. You want to just take those around? And then I also have the fleet maintenance log here for the past 5 years since engine 1 has been second due. In other words, there's one truck that's going out all the time. This just backs it up. And it's costing us a ton of money just to keep it in service.
Ken, is it harder to find parts for something?
Absolutely, harder to find parts. He actually had to go on a hunt, and he said something about maybe even having to have, was it the machinist?
Have machine parts for the
Machine
pump.
parts.
But even something as simple, like NFPA talks about warning lights, we can't even find bulbs to replace warning lights when they're out, and if we do find a bulb, we have to maybe get a used one, and it's just really tough to track down, stuff like that.
So we're actually talking about, last year we talked about the serviceability of the truck being its age, and we had DOT come up and do an inspection on it. They pulled it out, and they failed it. And they failed it because of the leaf spring, but not the leaf spring. The springs and the exhaust, we had those repaired. That was $3,400, $3,500. But that's the roadworthiness of the truck. Now we're talking about, is it able to do its job to be able to pump water on a fire ground when you're trying to mitigate an emergency?
But I think it's worth mentioning, this isn't the first time we've put money into repairing issues with the pump and the piping leaking. We spent a substantial amount of money, but over the last, at least a couple of years, I've been here full time.
Well, we had 2 trucks where we didn't realize it, but they sprung a leak. And having the service guy come in, what it actually did, we have a drain in that floor. So the water drained out of the truck and filled our gray water tank twice. And now that's a cost, it's like $850 just to empty that. So
Yeah, that's engine 2, like you have engine 2 on the plan, so we're having similar issues with piping and pump stuff.
it's just because of the age of the truck. So the repairs, they're, as he said, how long are you going to Band-Aid this? This is, I hate to say it, it creates work for him, but he goes, it's sort of counterproductive, you're Band-Aiding the situation. And just because you repair a pipe, it doesn't make the truck any newer. It's just that pipe is newer.
Do you want to talk about the pump possibly needing a replacement compared to the overall value of the vehicle?
Those were just, those were only,
Did you see this? You watch it?
Sure.
those were only quotes for if you could repair it.
The second one's a quote for a total pump replacement, and that's a low ball estimate, the $23,000. He's afraid that when he takes it apart that it's going to kind of be Pandora's box, and he explained that to us in a conversation via email and telephone. So the cost is probably going to be a lot more than $23,000 to replace the pump if he pulls everything down and decides that's what it needs to be. It needs to be replaced versus repair. And then I think when we were going to trade the vehicle in, or we were discussing a couple years ago when you had it on Capitol, we had a vendor come out and look at the truck, and we asked about a trade-in value then, and he thought that maybe 2 years ago he might have been able to get $20,000 for the vehicle. So to put $20,000 to $30,000 in to repair a pump in a truck that's not worth that, and it's going to continue to have problems, it maybe does not make sense, or definitely doesn't make sense.
Can you remind me, how much is in your regular operating budget for like repairs of equipment and so on?
I have, it's like 20, $8,000 a year. That's split up over a whole fleet.
The ambulances is about 7,500, and then the rest is for trucks, but we also have other things built into that, like maintenance to our building, so it's kind of a catch-all for any type of maintenance that we would need to do. It's not specific to a vehicle.
Yeah, and we'll go over some of the things for the maintenance of the building, different parts. Again, sometimes it might look, it might look like we're just in disrepair, we haven't up. The bottom line was, my goal as a chief is to make sure that my apparatus and I'm getting an ambulance out the door. There were times when couldn't get an ambulance out the door. There was one truck that was so unreliable, I wouldn't put a patient in it. We solved those problems, but what's it do? It detracts from other things. You're not able to put, I think the maintenance costs in our budget for the fire department are like $1,000 a year. So, and that's just.
Maintenance costs for what?
Like just miscellaneous.
Different things in the building.
But it sometimes gets slid in under the same line item, or, for example, we use that same line item to do a lot of radio repairs this last year.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Like I said, it's like a catch-all.
So, so obviously the priority is to make sure we're able to deliver services with equipment that's not going to fail us in the middle of an incident when people's lives are at stake. So, something to think about. You see the repairs that are there for engine 1 that we've done the past 5 years. We've got the quotes for the work, things like that, and I'm trying to give you some guidance on what where other municipalities draw the line as far as useful life, and then NFPA, which is a standard we have to meet. Okay. The other thing that we have to be concerned about is if you don't have trucks that aren't reliable, you have ISO, which is insurance that sets your insurance rates in the town. You just have the legal exposure all the way around. So
you're saying these trucks aren't reliable?
I'm saying engine 1's not reliable. It was reliable for many years.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just talking about currently. So.
Right. So, and quite honestly, when we talked, Mike, to the gentleman from W.D. Perkins who services our pumps, he basically said, even if you fix it, it still can fail. You could still have a catastrophic failure of that.
But if you repair it, but this estimate, you have one for repair and you have one for replacement.
Correct.
Yeah,
we don't know which one we need to go with, but what he's saying is those are very conservative. But that's, again, this truck has been on capital for at least 5 years. I know I've presented about this truck at least 5 years. But that's engine 1. But there's so much information we want to relay to you folks, and it gets a little bit overwhelming.
Can I ask you, I'm just looking at the budget spreadsheet, and I notice line 58,700, I think it's replace equipment.
Yep.
That's EQ. The current budget's 15, the one you're proposing is 55. So that's 40,000.
Actually, are you looking at the new one?
I'm looking at the one that's on SharePoint right now.
Right, and that's what Matt's doing.
Is that 40 for a specific thing, or is that more?
You know what? I haven't even sat with Matt. Matt's doing that side of it right now.
Okay.
We're calculating what our increases or we're working on that right now. We've got fire pretty much done. Kelly and I just got to finish it up. So Matt might have put an increase there.
We haven't gone into that spreadsheet and done anything, so
We haven't done
I'm
anything
not sure
with
what
it.
you're speaking of.
We can come look at it if you want.
But that's engine 1.
So
That's the number 1 on our list.
currently 15, proposal 50.
Oh, I can't answer for that because that line item we typically use to replace turnout gear, and that 15,000 was something that we had bumped up last year. It used to be like 8, so to increase it to 55, I'm not sure if that's a typo but we did not do that.
Okay.
So that's item number 1. And the next one is,
If I can just back up a slide, my only thought would be that Matt had added that because he had discussed adding replacement of command vehicles into our operating budget. So that may be the reason that that number is elevated, if he had been working on that, but I can't answer for that.
Yeah, we haven't had our meeting with Matt, and we're doing what we think we need. And then I think his strategy was to meet with you folks, and he's, as his example, make the sausage while we're with you folks, so that you understand it better,
Yeah.
which I agree with to some extent, because that way you're able to hear all the like behind-the-scenes type things that come up as you talk, but
Right.
we haven't had that yet. We're working on our budget right now, and I think we're meeting with you on the 22nd.
Okay.
All right, so I'm sorry, not vehicle number 2. Item number 2 for FY23 is the vehicle extraction system. That was something that in 2010 was put into the fire station. It's an exhaust system that gets, it's a hose that hooks right to the fire apparatus as you drive it in, and it reduces the carcinogens and the carbon monoxide that comes in the building, the diesel exhaust, and it has a system that blows it out of the fire station. So that broke on numerous occasions. We've repaired it a couple of times, then found out that our generator was undersized, and that's what it was, why it was blowing capacitors. But in any event, it hasn't been operable since last June. It quit right before we got struck by lightning.
When we had another power outage where the generator kicked on.
Yeah. So this is meant to protect the health and welfare of our firefighters who work 24-hour shifts in the building, is to keep them away from those type of exhausts. The equipment removes cancer-causing agents, 100% capture of vehicle emissions from the exhaust. Diesel exhaust is harmful and to firefighters and it's carcinogenic. So the question number 3 is the big one that Matt has on it. Does this disclose any legal exposure, service failure, or threats to life and property that has occurred? I just put that this is a health and safety issue that puts us out of compliance with OSHA and National Fire Protection Association, NFPA standard 1500, which is standard for firefighter safety. This could result in firefighter cancer and secondary union grievances and litigation. So, you know, we're concerned about that. We did have a quote, and it's on here, but I didn't see the number there on that one.
There was a couple different options depending on whether we needed to upgrade to 3-phase power. So we would have been able to afford the lesser option under our operating budget if we hadn't had to do some other emergency repairs to our radio system. But looking down the pipeline, we were possibly having to go to the 3-phase power. So the more expensive quote, and this is from November 2021, was $18,000 and some change, which, again, I don't know how much that's increased due to labor costs and inflation and availability of parts. So
also, along with that, we had to spend money on air quality testing in the fire station, and the findings were that they found volatile or organic compounds within the building, and their recommendation was repair the system immediately. And so it's somewhere between $18,000 and $30,000. We're not really sure what it is because we don't know. We're talking about the upgrades, the electrical system and everything that have been funded, but we don't know about there's been some some disagreement on whether we need to go 3-phase power or whether they just need to do a different transformer outside the station. So if we were to upgrade the system so that it had the 3-phase, it would probably be $30,000. So that's that one. And let me see here, I go back. The next one is fire station windows and boiler. That being built. And then fire department buildings. Heat and cool, right? Yeah.
It's the HVAC system.
Those first two I had as priority ones. I had to list them both because they're both life safety issues. Priority, the next one would be fire station windows and doors. Right now, we don't have air conditioning. I think we're the only department that has 24/7 people in the building, and we don't have air conditioning. We also have very poor heating. The boiler is 22 years old. It's had its days. We've spent a lot of money on repairs with that, so I'll just say that the guys and gals need a warm place in the winter and a cool place in the summer, and that's what we have as far as that goes. Now, this was just a ballpark with me. I'm thinking if you had to replace the boiler and the HVAC system, you're looking at, I would say, off the top of my head, and I'm not a tradesman, so I don't know. I'm sure Mike and Shirley, being on building and facilities, have a little bit more experience with that, but I would say that's probably a $5,000, I'm sorry, $500,000 nut to crack, so.
Is that the original boiler?
Yes, yes it is. It's oil and then we had, let's see.
We don't have any HVAC system, though, just to be clear. That would be for a brand new system. That wouldn't be to replace anything.
Is that a priority 2?
I had it as a priority 3. For FY23. I just put those in order.
So the other 2, you said both were priority 1.
Both were priority ones. Yeah, okay, so you're right. I should have said, that's how we listed them, but let's put it a priority.
So just before we get into that, and
Yep.
making a bunch of notes, what I'm gonna request is that all the presenters actually put this on a spreadsheet. It's their requirement to list what their tasks are that they're asking for with their priorities for their departments. It's too much for us as a committee to take all this information and try to do their work. It'd be easier for them. They already know what their stuff is.
Yeah.
So I'll forward the sheet that Matt sent. I think it's in a Word document anyway, so you'll be able to just type it in, but
I thought mine's already on SharePoint.
Okay.
I don't, you know what?
Yeah.
We listed this way, and I had talked to Kelly, but we had done it a certain way, and then you said you wanted this.
There was a request for that. That just makes it easier for when we're going through this, but when we're doing the grading portion of it. So this is my logic behind it. I sit there and I make my list of all my priorities and everything.
Yep.
I start with the fire department. You start with the highway department. She starts with the police department. She starts with whatever. So
Yeah,
now
we
we're
don't know
jumbling
who's
through all this paperwork for no reason. We just need it in a clear order so you can take page 1. All right, everybody across has a 3, 5, 6, whatever.
And I think that's what Matt wanted to do with the SharePoint thing, but not everyone has SharePoint. And that's.
There's only 2 members that don't have SharePoint, and I'll make sure that they get it.
And this is why today I made sure I brought this stuff, because I knew they didn't have it.
This was a request just to simplify for our meetings.
The only thing you don't have is my actual form that says, I answer the questions from Matt, but those are there. And I listed this as, let's see. That's a priority 2. That's listed as a priority 2.
It's a little confusing now because we've gone to this cloud base and SharePoint, and people can't access it if they don't have a government email and things like that. So we're trying to come up with a system, but to Ben's comment before we started the meeting, this is the way we did it last year. We had a spreadsheet that showed all the priorities, so then all we need to do is anybody with SharePoint can look up the document and say, all right, so what was it with fire engine 1? So they can look up and see what your narrative is on that.
Yep.
I can make sure Shirley and Ellie have that.
And that's all there.
To help them
I can
with that.
print those out for you folks.
We don't want to print them all out. Anybody with SharePoint doesn't need to print it out. That's the purpose of that.
I totally
We only
get
need
it.
it for Shirley and Ellie because they don't have access to the SharePoint.
Right. But I also wanted them to have this today. I wanted everyone to have the same
Yep,
one that
yep,
you.
that just simplifies it for when we're looking at it quickly, we can, but for the grading portion of it, we need it on that spreadsheet that we used last year
Yeah.
with the
and
priority.
The other thing that wasn't on SharePoint that we just did today was what grants we've got versus what we've been
Yeah, so
funded
you can
capital-wise.
upload this
And
other
then-
documents that you had, I don't know if all this is on SharePoint, you can just upload all
Yeah, we
that
can do
stuff.
that, and then the NFPA
Yep.
thing is on there too. We provided that on SharePoint.
Yep.
So I was wrong, Kelly, I mean, Shirley,
Sure.
that was a priority two,
Which one?
HVAC.
HVAC.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Priority three, the total requested was $130,000 to replace all the floors in the bay area, and repaint them so that all the, we can see when we're backing them in. We usually line them up with a line, and we want something that's a little bit less, I should say, more slip resistant. And then in the meeting rooms in the fire station, and everything, all those tiles are cracked and worn up, and there's water coming up through the floor and causing damage to the cracks. So we got a quote from a company that said, they gave us a quote of $108,000 to do the whole first floor.
And do it in what?
It's a concrete coating. It would have a life expectancy for like the duration of the building, and it's, they've done a bunch of fire stations actually in the area in New England. So what would go out on the apparatus floor would withstand the weight of the apparatus, and then thered be another durable coating that would go over all the flooring surfaces in the office area, in the meeting room downstairs.
And that floor quote is on SharePoint. It's on.
How long do they warranty it for?
I would have to look at the quote.
So you're gonna want, and I'm just gonna help, because this is something I'm very familiar with.
Okay.
So there's a couple of different concerns that you want. Is the warranty on it, and what the effects of the hydraulic pressure. Because you have water, you already stated you have water coming up underneath the slab.
Yep.
That could be problematic.
And
This is-
he's aware of the issue with the moisture. We had another vendor do some testing for what you just talked about. He said that they would do that before they did their process, but this specific flooring is designed in areas where there's a moisture problem. But I would have to find out the specific about all that stuff you just talked about. It might even be in the quote. I just can't recall it off the top of my head.
Depending on how much water you have under the slab is gonna make a big difference as the results that you achieve. No matter what you put on there, it won't
Right.
stop water
I
from the
understand.
hydraulic. Okay.
Yep, so you'll obviously be somebody we'll consult and we'll let you look at that.
I'll help you as much as I can
I
with
get
it.
it.
I just don't want to see you go.
You have an
down a
expertise in
path-
that
down a
area in terms of
path.
building
You
a
can-
facility.
You can go up to Sheldon's Holly Davidson. They had that floor done twice, and they still have the same results, because they have a high water table around there, so there's hydraulic pressure, so you want to, it's something that you want to look into.
Yeah, well, the guy that we got a hold of was somebody who is familiar with fire stations and does fire stations, but like you said, you want to have the one.
And I'm familiar with their product. It's warranted for a year from the manufacturer, so that's the answer, the short answer on it, so.
Okay, well,
It's something that you want to consider, that's,
yeah,
because if, under perfect conditions, it lasts a very long time. The biggest thing that the effects that you have from that is you'll have yellowing over time. Not the end of the world, you get the amber color in it, but if you have any adverse reactions to the hydraulic pressure, and they don't warranty it past a year, you could have a problem. So you just want to address that up front. That's all.
yep. The next thing we had was,
Which that would end up going through building and facilities
Right,
anyways, if we
right.
get to that point.
all of this stuff would, right? Anything
Yes,
built?
yep. This is just to rank it and get you the first step, and then it has to go
Quote's
through the
there,
finance
it's on
department
SharePoint.
and get on the warrants and all that stuff, get voted on, and then
Yeah.
the process. So it's a long road.
After the base station floors, we had security systems, fire department security and camera system. There are we're not eligible for any grants. Actually,
So the, something that you may want to consider, because it's a little off track of what we're doing, but that's okay, I'm just going to give you the information anyways. The fire department, I mean the police department, if you remember, they were talking about their camera systems, and we're also talking about the fiber optic system that we're using for the radio system. There's some bandwidth left on there, and you're going to be connected to the fiber optics because it comes from the antenna to you, or from the station to here to the school, whatever it is. So you may be able to get into that. I would talk to the IT guy and see.
That's for the cameras only though, not the door locks, correct? That would have nothing to do with,
The door locks, and that's something you may want to reach out to Adam about, because he's looking at, he presented for this building for door locks. So if we get a unified approach to these things, you may find that there's a benefit.
Yep.
May not be, but he's already doing research. If everybody's doing their own little thing, you may miss out something. You may find something that helps Adam. It can work both ways, so.
Yeah, so,
I'm just trying to give you information to help you, Kelly, that's all I'm trying to do.
yeah. And then the other thing we had was interior furnishings. Basically, the furniture we have in the station is old Bank of America equipment from, that was
Stuff we
donated.
I might know somebody that could donate some more.
Some what?
I might know somebody
Yeah.
that could donate some more.
Yeah. Well, so the bottom line is we're looking for some stuff that's comfortable for the guys in the meeting room
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and just upgrading the hardware we have. And if you look on the municipal thing, with 5 years, 10 years is what furniture costs. Again, you have guys in the station 24/7.
Is there a list of all this stuff along with quotes on SharePoint?
We didn't do a list of that. We didn't do a complete list on interior furnishing. That was just a general thing.
pretty much every furnishing, whether it's a desk, a file cabinet, it's come recycled from another department, it's been a donation, or it's been, I hate to say, found on the side of the road, or it's been purchased by the Douglas Firefighters Association, and it's all either the same age of the building, or it's used and it's worn out, so.
Yeah.
I know I have some quotes for some of the things that you talked about, so I can upload those.
Number 7, basically, the history of Douglas has always been more or less, if it's free, it's for me. So we would get stuff from the Department of Defense or whatever and retrofit it. And one of the trucks we have, we're getting rid of the brush truck that's 49 years, the Wood. There's a truck that served us, but it's a 49-year-old retired Army truck, deuce and a half with a tank on it. 49 years old, repairs are, you can't get parts for it. If they are, they're very high priced. The condition for us to get the brush truck grant was we have to put that out of service. That goes away. So the next thing we have is we got a 1986 that's the same thing, it's just newer, and it's a 5-ton, 5-ton, with super single tires on it that keep deflating. We got a tank from another truck from Standish State Forest and retrofitted to that. The bottom line is that just takes a lot of work for us, and it again, it's a safety issue. It creates, they don't have the safety devices and the safety features as something that should be meeting 1901, the standard for fire apparatus. So we're going to be at a crossroad where we're going to have to take that truck out of service as well. And the problem right now we have is that we don't have anything really that's, because we replaced the truck in 2017, we're not eligible to get any grants to replace those. So We're gonna have to think about what we're gonna do. We have a brush fire season that's coming, and we're gonna have to think about what we're gonna do with that truck. Again, it was a project that we took on, and it's something that nobody has the time to really finish. It's still painted army green.
It's really the funding to fund and maintain something, and to fund that project to completely build that truck to the way it needs to be. So it's been kind of done in increments. So between this truck and the new one that we're going to get on a grant, those will be our two frontline pieces to protect our state forest as well as the other wooded areas of town that interface with homes. So the real risk of not having a good forestry fleet is, I mean, certainly lots of use of our state forest lands, but also to protect buildings, protect Route 16 that goes through the center of the state forest. So we're talking major infrastructure with water and power and transmission lines and that sort of thing. So yeah, it may not seem that important to necessarily take care of a forest fire in comparison to other things we're doing, but it could seriously affect the town if we don't have the proper vehicles to get out there quickly and mitigate a fire while it's small.
Right.
You brought up a good point. Considering the state owns a good portion of our town and state forest, what is their responsibility and their assistance that they give us as far as forestry fires?
We get a truck with, like, this is the whole area. They're a minimally funded program as well, so if we have an incident, they do always come out, but they basically send a small pickup truck forestry vehicle with like 4 guys in it, and they help
They don't even
us.
have 4 guys. It's maybe 1 guy, and you don't know if that 1 guy is gonna be up in a tower that day. You know, they're in a tower.
So they're not giving us any help?
No. they're only
Essentially not
seasonal.
That's
enough.
fine.
They're only
Can you
seasonal.
send them a bill?
No.
No, I have
What do you mean?
I have a different
No.
thought on that.
Yeah,
No, I get what you're saying.
We
Yeah,
rely
no, I have a
heavily on
different thought
mutual
that.
aid.
And it's not a capital thing.
yeah.
There's been times that they've been helpful at 1 guy, but there's also times they're not all that helpful.
I think that's unacceptable.
Yeah, this has to go into,
That's unacceptable.
I completely agree.
So
Yeah.
it's a major expense and a major obligation for us to maintain their property.
No, I totally get
Okay,
it.
so they need to step up and start doing something.
Well, can't you
They're
start,
minimally funded, so
you
we'll
could
wait.
start sending them bills?
No,
Doesn't work
I don't
that
want
way.
to. I don't want to send them a bill because the bill doesn't
Well, you've never
necessarily
done
get
it.
paid.
You've never done
No,
it,
no,
so.
no.
But,
That's
I mean,
okay. It's not something.
And
It's
then
not a
send a
capital
collector.
conversation. This will
You're
be
right,
brought up
you're right.
somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll
It's
address
a-
it separately.
You're right, it's a matter for another.
Just to put this number, this $300,000 in context, that would be to replace the vehicle with a used forestry vehicle, and we would never suggest to do that with any type of new fire apparatus, simply for the reason that this vehicle would be used seasonally. It would be used, the amount of runs that it would do would maybe be about 50 per year versus a fire apparatus like Engine 1, which would be used probably 500 to 700 times a year. So we could maybe get away with purchasing a newer used vehicle, like something newer than was built in the 80s, that another community had retired in an effort to try to save money. So if we could find something.
You know, here's another way to look at it. I would say, invite Maya to come out, take a look at what we have for tankers to go in the woods and say, do you want to insure that? Or is it,
I don't want to invite Maya out to do anything. We already have enough issues with Maya.
No, but what
So
I'm-
I think this goes beyond that. So to bring the town administrator into the conversation, we're just talking about the forestry truck, and Kelly explained as the obligation that we have to put out the forest fires and stuff. So I asked the question of what assistance do we get from the state? And the answer was that we might get a truck with anywhere from 1 to 4 people in it, providing that they weren't in a tower somewhere. Where they own such a large percentage of the town in their state forests, I would think that they would be obligated to provide a little bit more than that. So it's something that I would like to pursue, to see what their input into it. I don't think the insurance company would have anything to do with it. I think the state needs to step up and do their end of things, if that's a big concern about
forest fires.
Right. Okay, so that's basically the FY '23 request. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna fly through FY '24 through '30. So in the beginning, I talked about engine 2 needing, and this is, all this information is on SharePoint, so if you want to look it up, I have, every one of these items is on SharePoint. I haven't got quotes for what that truck would cost yet, because I know I'm not there, and I'm not going to cause myself work for nothing, so. But engine 2 is 22 years old. It's a 2,500 gallon tanker. And I've said this many times, but 70% of our houses and dwellings are outside of the water district, so that truck becomes very, very useful in moving water and making sure that we have enough water to supply. Again, it's 22 years old. I already went over what NFPA 1901, the standard for automotive fire apparatus and pumps. Again, we're talking pumps and trucks. There's two components to these things that are 22 years old. I would estimate that being around $600,000. FY '25, our 2018 ambulance would be 7 years old then, so it's going to be time to replace that. And a bottom line quote for that right now would probably be in the area of $300,000. It might be a little less because we already have the loading system, and but I'm not really sure. We'd have to chat about that. Also in FY '25, your ladder truck is now 20 years old. It's at its useful life. Again, that was acquired on a grant of $500,000. That price has doubled since then. And I know we have more commercial properties and things that are going to be coming in. That's a 75-foot aerial. I would highly recommend you go to something that's 100 or 105-foot aerial. So you're looking at probably $1.3 million to replace that. So this is why I prefaced this in the beginning, was you got 3 pieces of apparatus that have met their useful life. That's about $3 million worth of equipment that is going to need to be replaced. Jumping out of that into FY '26.
Excuse me? Yep. I have a question, Ken. Regarding the ladder truck.
Yes.
Status of it, good condition, resale?
I would say you could probably get some money for that. Again, it's...
Again, we're talking year 25.
Yep, so it's, we maintain all our equipment as best we can. However, some of the things that were talked about in that municipal report were that we use, what do we use on the roads?
The calcium chloride, I mean, that diminishes the life expectancy of all the vehicles in New England, and we look at NFPA, that's looking at the entire country, so like down south, they may be able to get a few years longer because they don't deal with that,
Right.
But in terms of trade-in value, we may do better trying to trade it in at year 20 rather than waiting to year 25, as we are with engine 1, not having as much resale value, waiting that 5 years.
That pump has a lot less
Hours.
less hours on it. And it's an aluminum stick, an aluminum aerial platform, not platform, an aluminum aerial ladder. And the thought was when we bought it, well, you know, we got some smaller roads and things like that, but a ladder is meant not for height. Some of it's height, but a lot of it's reach. We have a lot of houses that are up a long driveway and have a big long setback, and you can even extend an aerial ladder with a 100 or 110 foot aerial and still not have the reach you want. So it's all about, and again, the reason we do aerials is we have to do roof work, and you have stability and safety when you kind of cut a hole in a roof to let out the toxic heat and gases. And the other thing it's good for is rescuing people out windows, things like that. So that's the importance of having a ladder.
We actually use it all the time for chimney fires where it's not
Yeah.
safe for us to throw a ladder and stand on a roof, so, and we've had, I'd say, close to a dozen of those this winter alone, and we have a lot of them.
Right. So,
Possible some resale or,
yeah, I would say, yeah. But you're looking at probably 1.3 million.
Good, Ellie.
Does the ladder truck, if you have a 100-foot ladder, does that impact how it fits in the
Yes,
garage?
yes.
So you need a new fire station?
No, they can, yes and no, it depends, but they can
That's it.
design the truck to fit in the building if we give them the dimensions. It might be slightly bigger, but we wouldn't need a new, it would fit in our fire station.
The only real difference it would have between the truck we have and something else, like if you went 100 foot, you'd probably have 2 tandem axles in the back instead of 1. Right now, it just has 1. It's, I think 36,000 pounds, that truck is 36 ton or something to that effect. Are we still, anybody have any other questions about the ladder truck? All right. So next would be cardiac monitors. Matt, you came in 2017, and that's when we did them, so they would be 9 years old, the cardiac monitors. The projected useful life of cardiac monitors is 8 to 10 years. I'm gonna say, I went up, we paid 60,000 for the last 2 that we bought. So 2 of them, one of them's 30,000. I'm gonna say that since 2017, they've probably gone up at least $5,000. So I just ballparked it at 70. I don't have updated quotes on that, but it would be something that sophisticated. You don't mess around with, you replace it when you need it.
if I may.
Yeah.
So Kent, you're saying that in FY '26, they'll be 9 years old,
Correct.
and the life expectancy
8
is...
to 10, I would say, yeah.
And do you have more than 2?
Yes.
No,
No, I have 2.
Just 2?
So I'm thinking they're about $35,000 a piece now, so 2 of them would be 70.
So you don't consider them higher up in your time frame,
They could be, surely.
more important than some of the other stuff?
Yeah, I would say probably, you're right, you're probably right there. I just wanted to get everything on the radar so that people understand what the needs are. My needs will probably change from right now to different to next year. I just wanted them to get on the radar, but you're absolutely right, they could be a higher priority.
Because if their life expectancy is 8,
8 to 10 years, and he
Yeah.
has them at 9.
well,
Yeah, no, I just,
you must use them quite a bit.
Every day.
Yeah. So that's just me, retired nurse, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I get it. I totally get what you're saying, and, we'll probably take a closer look at that, but anyway, I just wanted you to,
Yep.
I was more or less trying to forecast the things that were gonna be coming up so that everyone had an understanding of all the ones that were there.
we also may be able to build them into replacement, when we replace the ambulances, and
Yeah.
the cost of that, so there might be another way of skinning that cat.
Yeah.
Well, I just suggest you take a second look at that.
Point taken. Absolutely. FY '28, self-contained breathing apparatus.
Oh, did you go?
no, you skipped 20.
Oh, I skipped 27, Jaws of Life. The
Yeah.
last time we replaced the Jaws of Life were in 2013. We did that through capital here. They were $35,000 then. I'm gonna say they're probably 50 now. And that's easy enough. If that was something you folks wanted to fund tomorrow, I could definitely come up with an accurate quote, but I'm just ballparking things through experience. And looking at the climate of how everything's going up right now in price.
Yeah.
FY '28, self-contained breathing apparatus. We got a grant in 2013, or late, it was the 2013 one, which we got awarded the grant in 2014. Those are 15-year life expectancy. That was 2000, so they'd be 14 years old. And that, you know, it's really nice to get a grant, but the problem you get is when you buy everything new all at once, guess what? It all expires all at once. And if you don't get the grant again, then you have another problem on your hands. So those will be up for replacement in '29, but we're just trying to prioritize things and make you aware that those are coming up on your list. FY '29, let's see, we got the stuff from all the the large diameter hose and the appliances. When we did the North Brown deal, when we put the cistern up there, we were able to get them to fund that. That was $60,000. We're going to estimate that that's probably 70. But we actually replaced all of the large diameter hose, which is supply hose that goes right to the hydrant and to the truck. 1,000 feet on each truck. And then we replaced all the appliances as well, because we went up 1 inch on all the diameters, so we had to replace all the appliances too, and we got them to fund that. And FY '30, in 2011, we had a decent sized brush fire, and I saw other towns with all these UTVs and everything, and I said, you know, why are we not doing this? So I approached the association, because I knew the town didn't have the money, and the association funded the UTV. And the UTV is what we use to, if we have a report of a fire, we go out and we recon it, find the fire, stage all our equipment, then we pull them in, instead of the other way around. And they're very useful in the forest. We get lost hikers all the time that we got to go find, because they realize now it's getting dark and my phone's running low, so that's when they call us in the most difficult time. So that's what we use for. It's a very useful piece of apparatus, and we could actually use another one. But that one would be 15 years old, 60, no, it would be almost 20 years old in 2030. So that's all I have.
Do you use you work with the police department with their, what do I want to call it?
The drone, yeah.
Drone.
Yeah. They, you know, when it's available. If it's bad weather, it's not available.
Anybody have any questions for Ken?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ellie.
I'm interested in the Douglas Firefighters Association. It's an active association. How many members and stuff like that, or who is it usually? Is it just firefighters, or their spouses, or and how do they raise? I mean, if it's, you know, that's a pricey item for, and I'm assuming they funded it in 2010.
Yes.
For the UTV.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a group of firefighters, spouses, friends of the fire department. Their main fundraiser is Oktoberfest. They do other smaller events throughout.
A golf tournament.
A golf tournament throughout the year. And the money that's raised is used to supplement some of the purchases that the town makes. So at that time in 2010, they had a stockpile of money, and that vehicle back in 2010 cost about $8,500.
No, it was more than that.
Or $12,000.
Yeah,
I think it was about $12,000. So they purchased that, and they purchased a utility trailer to tow it if we have to tow it long distances and we can't drive it on the road. At that point, so they spent about $12,000 on it. And then since then, they build up their coffers. But there has not been a large purchase since that one has been made. So their most recent purchase was some extrication tools that are for more delicate extrication tasks, such as cutting off rings, or if your hand, say, stuck in a machine, like such as down at the envelope company at Gilboa Street, because we had a few calls where people were stuck in some places, and that paid about they think they spent about $700 to help defray the costs of purchasing some extrication tools, and then our budget picked up the other half of that. So they do things like that and buy small things, but
They bought the saws and stuff.
they bought a saw, a specialty cutting saw, but really, really small purchases, nothing that would go to, other than this one, which at the time barely made the threshold for a capital purchase. They really aren't fundraising to do big purchasing, to make my spiel here short.
Yeah, they're not going to buy us $250,000 worth of self-contained breathing apparatus or anything, but
No, but I'm thinking of things like Jaws of Life, or the interior furnishings type of.
furnishings I could see. Jaws of Life is a life safety issue that the town should support.
I used to drive through Upton on the way to the dentist. And so I go past the fire department there, and they had a fundraiser, this is several years ago, for the Jaws of Life. Fire and police are, high supported issues in towns. And so, use it, try to raise their money that way, or with your firefighters association, or make them promote it more, or give it a goal, or put something in the newspaper. I think you could actually, raise quite a bit.
It's been tough the last couple of years because we haven't been able to get out in public due to COVID, and then depending on the year of the Oktoberfest, if it's a rainy year, that being our big fundraiser, we may not get the business, so just because there's not people, if it's pouring out at that particular event. And I think it goes without saying that in 2022, everybody's got a lot on their plate. They're busier, they've got things going on at home with their own families, so getting people out to necessarily volunteer and try to really raise large sums of money is very difficult. So like I said, we've been using them to supplement smaller purchases, but I don't know that we're going to be able to take a big bite at some of the things that are listed here. And I don't know if it's fair for them to go and purchase interior furnishings. We're just trying to, with that group, purchase things that are going to enhance public safety for the citizens and the firefighters. That's the main mission of that group. So I don't know if interior furnishings is an appropriate thing to fundraise for, to be honest.
Anybody else have anything? Anything else, Ellie?
No.
No.
Oh, yeah. Where did this come from? This is the,
I got it off the internet under municipal useful life for tools and things like that.
okay.
That's up on SharePoint as well.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
Ken,
Actually, that might not be, I'm sorry.
If you could.
Yeah, I will.
yeah, not everything's up on SharePoint.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that we have is up there, but, I mean, like the quotes I sent out, we just got those, so I haven't had a chance.
Yeah, stuff you presented today, if you could put it up there for people, helpful. Anything else, Dick?
Not for me.
I have a question. What year is your second ambulance?
2019.
Okay, so you have a 7-year, from 2018, 2025 is when you want to replace that, and you have up to 2030, and you don't have it listed. When would you?
No, that's an oversight.
Yeah, it's a big oversight. You want to get that on this list so we can have that on there. Because that's a big ticket item.
I know that it's on SharePoint we have it as one of the narratives.
Yep, if you could put it on this thing, just to put up, this is like a little cheat sheet.
No, I understand. We just,
Helps, that's all.
this request was last minute, so I typed it
I
up.
remember
quickly.
seeing it on SharePoint on something else,
Yep.
but I didn't see it on this, so I didn't know if something changed.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, the goal for us, Mike, would be to try to replace them every 5 years. After 5 years, it's starting to get beat, although actually A1 is 4 years old now, and the inspector came out the other day, we had a flawless inspection. He goes, these medics trucks, there was a question, the guys were like, Horton's an ambulance that is like very high end, and they'd always want to try to push that down. I said, well, we're going to go with medics. Oh, you want a throwaway in? I said, they're all throwaway after 5 years, trust me. So I'd rather throw away something that cost me 250,000 and 308. So, but the inspector commented on how well they were holding up, so that was a good thing.
Anything else for the fire department? No. All right, Matt, did you have any luck with Patrice? Is she coming?
Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Did she
thank-
post anything even?
I'm not sure. Did you see anything for the adult senior center, social center on SharePoint?
Check.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
You're up, Matt.
Thanks, Kelly. I do not see anything for,
Morning, Matt.
Good morning. I don't think you will either. So, when it comes to the adult social center, yeah, if you want to. The bigger question is all going to be an Adams request.
It's the same thing?
there are two different ones.
Mike.
One is 363,000, the other one's 30,000. You have these memorized, Matt, or do you need one?
Pretty much, yeah.
So, make sure.
This one's 30.
30.
Yeah, I need the first for 30.
You need the 30?
Yes,
Here's some more 30s.
thank you.
You need a 363?
Yeah, I only have this one.
You need both?
Those are on
Kelly?
SharePoint too.
No, she just needs
I
the
have the
363.
He needs one too.
We need
You're welcome.
33, 363, he doesn't have.
363, you want?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want any of this stuff?
Okay, we handed out two things.
You need a copy of this?
No.
All right.
Getting back to the adult social center,
Yes.
the bigger question there is what I like to refer to as the Grand Army of the Republic Hall, because that's what it was called. And that's what it is. It was Town Hall. It's not the post office. The post office is a tenant. It's a very pretty and very important historic building in town. The social center happens to be in the basement. We're going to do a couple of things in that space this year. We are going to replace all the lights using Green Communities funds. So that's a grant.
Did Adam present all that?
He did, but I'm going back
Yeah,
over
no,
it
that's
because we're not neglecting the center. So you also know that we did the floors in the center.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're currently upgrading the cabinetry and other appurtenances inside the building. So really, when you look at Adams' requests, probably the largest remaining items for that space would be the heating, ventilation, air conditioning plant, which supports the whole building and not just the basement and the windows, basement windows. I don't put either of those things in the crisis category just yet. So if she wants to take a pass, we're always doing small projects there. I think the next thing that we're looking at is the ramp, trying to improve the ramp. She goes back and forth on exactly how she wants to skin that cat. My request are town-wide requests that is most appropriate for my office to bring forward. Not necessarily any one of the departments, even though you might think it falls in the department. These are bigger questions that affect the entire town across the board. The pavement management study was conducted by a very well-known national engineering firm, Stantec, that we hired using grant funds from the so-called Community Compact Program that the Baker administration put in place. And it was a specific type of grant called a Best Practices Grant. It, for a while, was a best practice, a high level of professionalism to do this kind of study. They drive around and they actually physically inspect every mile of roadway in your town and then write a report. The day is coming. It is fast approaching. It may only be a couple of years away, where that becomes a mandatory minimum practice, that the state will only give you your Chapter 90 funds and allow you to spend them if you have a prioritization list. So we're trying to stay ahead of that. Pavement ages fairly slowly, so the pavement management study done in 2020 will still have valid observations in 2030. You'll have to update it for the 10 years of wear and tear, but your priority list is unlikely to change because what was really bad in 2020 isn't going to get better on its own. So it'll still be bad in 2030. The study is something that every town resident should read, frankly, because A, it's really short, it's really simple, and if you're paying taxes, you probably have frontage on a road, so you should look at it, at least see where your road falls in the grand scheme of things. A number of scenarios were presented by the engineers for how much money does the town have to invest every single year to make up its years of not doing any road work and catch up and maintain roads. There's a scoring system. It's easy, 0 to 100. 100 being, we just laid it yesterday and it's beautiful and you can ride your skateboard on it and not fall over. And there's things that are below 10. And people in town typically know what those are. It's just a lot of coal patch is basically the roadway. The roadway may never have been properly laid out, dug out, and there's no stormwater management, so the water pools up and breaks up the roadway. And there are a fair number of roads in town that meet that description. What is counterintuitive about pavement management is that you need to be strategic about where you put your money. The engineers always recommend that if you have roadways in good condition, you make sure you maintain them at good condition. Roadways are inexpensive to maintain at good to excellent condition. When they start to slip into fair to poor condition, they become very rapidly very expensive to deal with. So if you take your entire roadway budget and you just throw it at the worst road you can think of in town, you've improved that road, but you've neglected to maintain all your good roads, and they are all deteriorating at a certain rate. So they tell you, first and foremost, crack seal your best roads to make them last longer. And John has been able to do that with Chapter 90 funds. What he has not been able to do is big roadway pavement projects, because we've had any number of bridges and culverts that have failed. And so the town, over the several years, even before I started, was on this campaign to address its many small bridges. And small bridges are $500,000 a pop. It just isn't inexpensive to do. And the Cedar Street Bridge being in progress right now, you can see how complicated it gets. It's just a little body of water, but it's water. And you've got to manage that water, and you've got to have people know what they're doing so they don't screw it up. And then modern practices to put much wider openings so that wildlife doesn't change the way wildlife moves up and down the water course. So every time we do a bridge, it's $500,000, $750,000. It just gets real expensive over time. We're starting to emerge from that cycle. We probably have one more problem case on Depot Street that we have to deal with in the next year. It's probably going to take us, by the way, a year to go through the design work. So we probably won't be looking to spend money to fix Depot Street until fiscal *24. So I'm hoping by
that one's a little more involved in the Cedar Street.
It's a little bit more involved because it has a wastewater pipe that goes across it.
In the side of the bank.
The sides of the bank. It's a historic situation too.
Can I just interrupt a minute? So here's the map, everybody.
Yeah.
It's on the town website. This color coded shows what roads are good and what roads aren't so good.
I know the
My
answer
roads
to
are
what I
good.
want to ask you, but I got to jump up. Excuse myself for a second. Can you tell them what the study suggested that we should spend and what John's allotted on Chapter 90 money, please?
So chapter money is an annual, Chapter 90 money is basically bond, the state issues a bond and then allocates the funds to the municipalities. And we get about $360,000 a year. It costs about $425,000, $450,000 to pave 1 mile of road. Give you a sense of where we are.
Would you repeat that, please?
So it's somewhere between $425,000 and $450,000 to pave 1 mile of road. That's all in. That's not a top coat. That's base coat top. Pardon me.
Thank you.
No.
By the way, everybody, I just want to point out on the town website, an example of structural improvement is Linden Street, which is my street.
Linden Street has a lot of alligator cracking and a lot of, so that's all the result of water.
Yeah.
And water that sits on the roadway for a long time. We've been trying to deal with Linden Street with a couple of culvert projects, but, so long story short, the report recommends that the town of Douglas spend about $1.5 million a year over the course of the next 15 to 20 years to catch up with its roads. We just don't have that kind of money. So to add additional flavor to the recommendations made purely on the condition of the pavement alone, you also do need to inquire as to, are there major thoroughfares in town that are in worse shape, that carry all of our vehicular traffic, including school buses, emergency vehicles, and bang up our snowplows pretty bad because they need to be opened right away. So the medical evacuation routes we have to open. So when you look at the list, and you say, where do we want to throw our first round of money? It would be on roads that carry, 2,500, 3,000 cars a day, every day. So that's trips, probably 1,500 one direction, 1,500 in the other. Especially if you notice the traffic count at the beginning of the road in the center of town is high, and the traffic count at the end of the road at the state line is low. Because what it's telling you is that those are Douglas people passing the counter in Douglas and not crossing over into Rhode Island or into Webster or Oxford, right there, or Sutton. So we want to, maximize the service to the people of the town. So I believe that the town, just based on a forecast of economic development activity and the town's finances, the town can afford to match its Chapter 90 funding every year. So this is why this isn't really John Furno's request for 1 year of funding. It's the town administrator, really on behalf of the highway commissioners, which is the select board, saying we need to create a program where we match Chapter 90 dollar for dollar every year, so that our roadway paving budget will be about $720,000 a year. And we can start to pick off some of those high traffic volume, low road condition, poor road condition targets, with South Street being really high on my list and Northwest Main being really high on my list. Those are the two that I recommend this year. Northwest Main, for instance, there's so many frost heaves up there. We just took out a set of springs on a snow plow. So we lost the plow for a long period of time. It's a very expensive job. And it's my personal opinion, if you do that much damage to a truck, the truck is rattled pretty good. We have to avoid those kinds of situations. That part of town is really tough. A lot of roads that go up Northwest Main and up that way towards the Sutton line are some of our most difficult.
Matching the funds would help the highway superintendent as well, because when we did the Cedar Street Bridge, even though we got a grant, he still had to take a good portion of his Chapter 90 money to make up for the shortcomings of that grant, correct?
Yep. So
1 minute, Alex.
I've just one last note. The only recommendation I would make to Capital Committee and to Finance and to Town Meeting is that sustain this program, because I've worked in municipalities, the last two that I've worked for, where this was kind of a catch-as-catch-can. Oh, we had a pretty good year this year. We got a little bit more in building permit money than we thought we'd get, so let's just pave this road or that road. It becomes very political, but it also becomes, it's a true lack of commitment to the idea of addressing the roads.
Yeah.
And without a program, without a disciplined program, it does begin to, everybody starts to say, oh, it's really political. And I'll tell you what happened in the last place I worked, because everybody accused the elected officials of not doing a good job paving the roads. The roads that didn't get paved were the roads where the public officials lived, because they didn't want to be accused of having their street paved, right? Well, over the course of time, by the time I got there and I had some money, it was the roads where town council members lived that really desperately, they were impassable. So you gotta do this road, you gotta do that road, because there's hundreds of people live, it was a residential subdivision with lots of ranches. There's hundreds of people living there, but you never had it improved because you didn't want to be accused of being a politician. But guess what? Now, everybody who lives around you thinks you're useless because you're not getting the roads fixed. You're neglecting your own neighborhood. Yeah, pavement is a long-term commitment. It is now on the scorecard for the bond rating agencies, because what they've come to realize is that municipalities that neglect their roads aren't really in financially stable condition. That at some point, they're going to have to either bond out or do some major tax increases to address their roads. So they like to see that you not only have a pavement management study, but that you've committed at least some amount of money every year to address the problem. And they give you bonus points for doing that.
By matching the funds, that puts us somewhere around 50% of the recommended amount, correct?
Listen, even Stantec admitted from this microphone or that one, when they briefed the select board, that they were being very conservative. Roads that are poorly built tend to deteriorate much faster than the ones that are built properly. So we have a couple of subdivisions in town where we know the story, right? So the builder builds about 3/4 of the homes and then says, "Oh, I ran out of money," right? And they abscond, and they don't do them, and then the planning board didn't assess a high enough surety, so there isn't enough money left for the town to pick it up, and so you're kind of left having to just build a good enough road so that people who bought their homes can get to their homes.
And added the dividers, along the roadside where.
Right, curbs, no curbs.
So now, again, at town meetings, we're being asked.
Oh, the bounds, yeah.
The bounds.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many effects of not maintaining the roads, from just road treatment and snow removal to coal patching. So you don't fix it and you create all these other issues that follow it down. So it just makes good sense.
I think it's informative. So now we can all go on Google Maps and we can actually, if it's a public street, there's a photo of it. There's an issue before the planning board right now. I was curious. The other night, there's a neighborhood that was talking about somebody that's going to be built in their area, and they were talking about the quality of their roads. And I went to the Stantec study and I looked at, oh my gosh.
They're right.
They're right. The 4 of the 5 worst roads in town are in this one neighborhood. And then this morning I went and looked, and the Google image is from 2013. So from 2013 to 2020, Forest, Fairfax, I'm going to forget the name of the other road that's there. Lucy. Those roads went from being very narrow but fairly passable, and you'd see a little bit of patch here, a little bit of patch there, to being just, they're a 9 out of 100 on the rating scale, because they weren't built properly when they were built, so they deteriorated very quickly, very quickly. So that's the roads.
Yep. Good. Oh, wait a minute.
I know that Ellie had...
Ellie had a question for us.
Go ahead.
I remembered Ellie.
Yeah, okay. I just remember John saying that that he hires out to get the roads paved. So we don't have the equipment to do it ourselves, and so that's why it costs, $450,000 to do a mile of road, because we're contracting it out. Am I correct thinking that way?
So this is where it comes in, right? If you have a small pavement program every single year, chances are you've trained your highway workers to do all the handwork, to do a lot of the side stuff, blending driveways back into the road, the berms, doing some of the handwork around catchment basins and other things. You don't train the guys to do that if you never do it. Once you have that core group of people that so Tiverton had this. All our highway guys were actually pretty good at handwork around asphalt, so we were Johnny on the spot. When we did a road, Lynch would come do the road, but all the handwork was done by Public Works, by the highway department. If you have an honest-to-God paving program where you would actually get a return on investment to buy your own asphalt equipment and use it because your people know how to use it, and you have enough throughput every single year where you're using it, you're not going to pay the markup for either the labor or the use of the equipment from the contractor.
All the material.
Right. So buying in bulk is always a
But you would have to really justify that. So myself as a builder, if I spend $30,000 to have my site work done, say, I should just hire somebody and buy a machine. Well, now the machine's $225,000 and the labor is $45 to $50 an hour. I better have an awful lot of work to keep that gentleman and that piece of equipment busy, and I need a place to store it. And then I have to maintain it, and then I have to replace it.
Plus healthcare coverage.
Well, all that stuff, it all plays, like to Matt's point, that unless you have a really good program to justify it, it's not necessarily the most economical approach.
No, I'm not.
Yep,
I'm
no.
not criticizing it.
No, no, no.
No, I don't
Am
think
I
you were.
correct in this?
Yeah, that's how the economics
No,
work.
it's a good discussion, so everybody can get their head around it, that's all.
What we have done, Mr. Chairman, to
Yeah.
continue to answer Ellie's thought process, we did buy a hot box,
Yeah, I remember that a couple of years ago.
and that's been worth its weight in gold. Putting down hot mix, I mean, we could probably still get a couple of they're called vibratory, machines.
Yeah.
I would like to see us use a couple of handhelds, portables. They're heavy, but they really pound that hot mix down.
Yeah.
And throw a shovel of sand over the top of it, and it'll last a lot longer. I don't want to get into the whole chipping sealing thing. I mean,
Right.
there's different approaches that can be taken, so you don't always have to do the Cadillac answer. So for folks in Douglas, you're familiar, if you go down South Street, and I believe the name of the road is Round Top Road when it gets to Burrowville.
Yeah, round top.
So they chip sealed that this last year for about 3 miles. And all the residents were up in arms when they first did it because it's got all those little pieces of stone. They're flying all over the place and they're in your yard, and you're hitting them with the lawnmower, and it stinks. It's a pretty cost-effective way to do roads. You would chip seal a road that was properly built.
Actually, Southwest Main Street, when you get into Connecticut, it's done the
chip
same way.
Yeah. But you would do that if it's properly built, if it has a good solid foundation and an appropriate level of base coat. But you can never do that on, say, Sunset, which was a poorly built road and it's falling apart.
Shirley?
So, just to bring up another point, you talk about Northwest Main Street from Oak Street to Ridge Trail. And on the other side of the situation is also from Oak Street, the intersection of Oak and Northwest, which goes by my house. Which eventually could go into Sutton, or during the good weather, we have 2 campgrounds, one in Sutton, one part in Sutton, and it is say Lake Manchog Campground, which is the one that's Douglas and into Sutton. So people come there for the summer and go back and forth to work, which increases the traffic and the wear and tear on the road. You can go into Sutton and into 146, or you travel into Connecticut, or you go back, it runs back around in Northwest Main Street and into Sutton that way, or out get onto 395. So then there's the hill, which is the icy nightmare. And I'm sure the budget for the town, we have snow sometimes when in downtown Manchog, which is Sutton, they don't have snow.
It's downright tropical in Manchester.
Yeah.
That's the flatlanders down there.
The
You're
Flatlanders.
up in the hills.
So I'm just saying, plus then you have the emergency situation where Parker Road, there are people living down there, and the road, getting to it,
That's not fun.
it's not fun. But it's a private road. And people have tried to make a deal, which sometimes did happen years back, where they agreed to buy the materials and the town did the road. But that was long ago. I think an attempt was made for that. And because I believe one family said no, it didn't happen.
I think you're right.
There's also been a petition at one point where people requested that the school bus go down there. So I'm just history, okay? So there's a situation where now we have a solar proposal, which is fine, but if I recall the requirement, because of the safety issue at a corner I live on, the trucks are only supposed to be going and coming from Northwest Maine to that site and go back that way. So again, for a limited time, wear and tear on that road. So is part of the pilot program deal, and I don't know what it is with that situation, to help contribute to the road situation, something to think about.
The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, that I was remiss, we're going to get a lot more paving done this year and next year than we have the budget for, because it's going to be done as part of water and wastewater extension improvements. So the town will get from the Uxbridge Douglas line on Lackey Dam on one side, Gilboa, all the way to the North Street Bridge, and then North Street from the bridge all the way up to Maine. Different maps call that different. It's either Northeast Maine or Maine, but we all know that road there, next to the Union Soldier Civil War Memorial. And then from there, all the way down through Northeast Maine, all the way to the Uxbridge line. All of that's going to be water, wastewater work, and it's going to be paved curb to curb. So those contracts will be let out with that verbiage.
The hopes to have it done this year?
It'll be 2 years.
Yeah. It'll be quite the challenge to get around town for a little while.
It will be. Yeah.
We can do it though.
Well, I'm not saying we can't do it.
I think, one of the weird things about this supply chain disturbances that are causing us grief on the pipe supply is that it's spacing out this project. So we're going to do part of it when we have the pipe, close it up, put the trench patch down, get everybody off the roadway, everybody will pass and repass as normal, and then when the rest of the pipe comes, we'll do the rest of the disturbance. To me, the worst of this is going to be North Street. That's going to be horrific. That road's been patched to the point where there's no reveal left on the granite curbing on either side. And every time we dig in there, we find another surprise. Not a surprise to me, because mill buildings, classic. It's a warren of pipes and abandoned passageways and everything all around their apron. Always, always. And for a city like Woonsocket, there's usually cobblestone to make it worse. But for a time, they usually ran the water through there to spin wheels, or they had their own drainage system from their rooftop and whatnot, and they would just let it go out into pipes into the street. Wherever it went. And it was all abandoned because they hooked up, or the road, the town came through with catch basins, and so they just abandoned a lot of those uses. So it will be, and then there's the water main connections to the properties there. I don't think it's as much of an issue in Douglas as it might be in some other places, but it was often, it comes to mind as Clinton, and the Bigelow Mill is on one side of Green Street, and all the worker housing was on the other side of Green Street. If you were to dig in Green Street today, you would see that all those stubs from all those water services are still there. They were never removed. The houses have long since been torn down, but you still have a mess under the ground. It just adds to the expense of paving and doing things. So we'll see, we find. But that road's in rough shape. Pothole season is
Yeah.
always an adventure on North, and somebody else is paying for that. That's grant money is going to pay for that. Ready for the next one?
Yep. Any questions on the first one? No? Good? Good, Ellie?
I don't know.
No, I'm just asking you.
You want me to think of more questions?
No, I'm not trying to encourage you, I'm just trying to acknowledge you. No, if you have any other questions from Matt on that, that's fine. If not, he'll move into the next.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think it was the May 2017 town meeting, so a couple months before I started working here. Town meeting approved, I want to say it was about $14,000 for a phone system upgrade here at the Municipal Center. And Suzanne Kane, in her background, had done a lot of telephone work at big buildings and was very savvy to what the considerations were. And so she largely was walking point on that particular project and ran into some snags, frankly. Our phone system here at the Municipal Center piggybacks off the main service connection, which is to the police department. So we are actually sharing some circuits and some hardware. And the wires in this building were too old. So you recall Scott Motika, who was doing information technology at the time at Gutna, and Mike Kuzinski had gotten a grant, another compact, community compact, best practices grant, to upgrade the wires in this building to handle data. The confluence of these things led us to install a phone system here that was an analog phone system, and it's going through some piece of equipment that translates that into data packets once it comes into the building. And our phones are actually data. They're not analog. So we're not translating electrical impulses on a copper wire. We're translating light impulses on fiber inside the building. But that's not how we're getting it. Okay? It was a good fix. It was $14,000. It made sense at the time. The technology was off the shelf. They came, they did it in a week, minimum disturbance to either to the town or to the police department. Fine. Downstairs, we have quite a bit of complicated telephony because we have connections to some very large databases, and we use the phones quite a bit. And those switches that were down there have started to age. They're actually to the point where they can no longer be serviced. And the police department was shopping around to solve their problem. And our existing telephone vendor, shall remain nameless, that had done the project in 2017, is basically using their captive power. They have us stuck. And they're trying to get us to spend $3,500 to buy a new switch for the Douglas Police Department. It should cost about $300. And our new IT people are saying, the only reason why you're not talking to us about the $300 switch we already bought and we already have in our office waiting for a job to do is because you want to charge us $3,500 for a slightly better switch. But it's all the same provisioning. It's ridiculous what they're doing to us. So as part of that little snit, if you want to call it a fight, we started to think about, well, maybe we should just get rid of these people because that's not very ethical business practice. At about the same time, the superintendent of schools approached me and said, can we do anything about the phones at the school department? This is a mess, right?
Same company.
No, actually much older. So the high school, you're really talking about the equipment at the high school has been there pretty much since the inception. And it's really so they've been to Capitol You may remember Donna coming a couple times and asking for a new phone system for the high school. They are not on the same exchange as us, so we actually have to dial their number. It's not an intercom phone call. We don't share voicemail or any other functionality of a phone system with the school department. They're in their own world and we're in ours. So when the superintendent came and asked me, I said, well, let's explore the cost of it, because the technology with telephones has gone really fast. It has changed very quickly. So we started talking about town hall only and switching over to what is called voice over internet protocol. So basically, all of our data from our phones would be turned into data packets the way the internet sends information. And the switches would prioritize those packets so that the calls still had high voice quality, but they're not going through copper and they're not being quote-unquote multiplexed or bent in any way to be audible. For the longest time, we didn't have caller ID or voicemail here in Town Hall, so we were just, and every time I picked up the phone, it was either a salesman trying to sell me janitorial supplies or somebody who needed a birth certificate. At least now with caller ID, I know.
Mike's phone.
I know, it says Fitzpatrick right there, I can tell it's him.
Call him later.
I called back. So we started talking to a company that has a statewide contract, so we don't even have to put this out to bid, we could just go. And they said, we can give you all of this whiz-bang phone stuff and store all of your phone call data in the cloud, in servers that are off-site, for about $8,700. So my estimate for us to move to that system in Town Hall and then add the schools, figure they're twice as expensive as us, because that's pretty much how it works, right? The schools always 2 times more expensive. And then round up, give us some room for maybe having to drill some holes in some of their buildings, $30,000 to completely upgrade all of the phones. So at Kent's building, at Bob Sullivan's building,
Highway,
the
everything.
library, if the trustees vote to do so. Store building. No, I can't do anything. It's their building. They have to vote to do so. But they could all join the program, and we would. It's under 50,000, so we don't even have to get competitive quotes. So we'll just.
And just to do the town buildings, you had a much higher number before. This was actually good news once you started.
And look, there'll be an annual expense, because anytime you put something in the cloud, you are basically subscribing to the service.
Right.
So how that offsets what our existing phone service costs and what we think we have to spend to fix the stupid switch downstairs, it's probably going to all wash out just fine.
So this is called new phone system,
Yeah.
not pavement replacement and repair.
Did I not update the label? That's what happens when you hurry. So the other part of this, I don't want to get into too much detail about this because it gets into an area where it should be an executive session, but I'll put it this way. In order to get the public safety radio project to work, we needed a dedicated fiber circuit to be installed from the fire department to town hall, from town hall to the Douglas High School. And there's a minimum size on a fiber circuit. It's 30 megabits of data, up and down. The public safety radio system is only going to use 2 of the 30. But if we put this phone system onto that network, we can also add security cameras and other security apparatus, panic alarms and things and carry all that traffic on our own extended local area network dedicated circuit. It's technology, right? So all of the public safety radio traffic can receive a priority marker and will never be interfered with. But we can greatly enhance the security of our buildings, because we can carry all the video traffic on our own dedicated circuit, and it's be part of our phone system install. So the phone technology contractor also does this, the cameras. So that would be added, right? That, I didn't put in the 30 grand because I don't know
No, and you.
where everything's gonna go, and I think all of that project is for next year.
Yep.
It needs to be spec'd out.
Prior to you joining the meeting, the fire department was talking about upgrading the cameras down there, and I suggested they may want to reach out to the IT department, unless it's you that they reach out to, and maybe they can piggyback onto that system.
Right now, the fire department's a great place to play paintball, because you can like sneak up on people and you can't see you coming.
Give them any
I'm just saying,
ideas?
I'm just saying, based on what we store in the building and the value of what we store there, we should have better security.
So you're saying this is for 20,
No, the phone system is for the 23, the
Okay.
year we're in.
Yeah,
and the rest of it?
The security piece I would do in 24, because I think that's a broader conversation with the police chief, the fire chief, superintendent of schools, and the building principals on where they want to secure their facilities.
it's a good opportunity to get a unified system town-wide.
But the radio system to improve that we've already in process
Yeah.
is going to be soon.
Yes,
Not soon enough.
Yeah,
late spring.
this spring. Okay. It's taking a long time.
Well, yeah, but you have
We just
licensing
got our lease
agreements
back
and
from
all.
American Tower, so
Okay.
we finally have, that was a
That was
big,
the biggest holdup,
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
because they'll be doing the antenna on the school pretty soon, correct?
So the wiring internally is done, and April vacation, they're gonna put up the tripod.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we're really close.
Yeah.
And all this, the cameras and the phone have nothing to do with the radio system
Yeah,
itself, it's just the extra bandwidth. on-
Creates an asset that we can use.
Right.
We can use more efficiently,
Yeah.
and we should.
We have
Because we've
space
got
there that's
a
not,
lot of space
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I get it.
we have to be selective as well as to what you use that space for.
Sure.
Can't crowd it.
Security is a big,
I just like the idea of the feeds being live.
Yeah, and I only put it out there so that it didn't get the thought and people said, oh, we've got extra bandwidth over here, we
No.
can use it. It's isolated to certain uses. Anybody have anything for their phone system for Mr. Wojcik? No? You all set? All set, Ellie?
I was confused there, this lease agreement with American Tower. I thought Verizon or whoever put up the tower initially had given free space to Douglas.
I didn't say we were gonna pay any money,
Okay,
we're not.
good.
But we still need a lease, we still need a property right to,
But isn't that
That's to be an
Webster?
operating
it's
agreement.
bigger, our stuff
Well,
is
the
bigger than
tower on
the
our property is American Tower.
Yeah.
But is that the Webster one, or?
No, that's industrial communications.
Okay, all right, so.
So American Tower owns a lot of the towers. Verizon is simply the tenant. If you want to drink a lot of beer, I'll do the whole tower industry thing, explain it all.
no, because then
Don't
you'll
encourage,
complicated.
don't encourage.
Well, that's what I put you all.
I'll just brag once. Tiverton was getting $25,000 a year for rent on a tower on its property. And when I was finished with those people, it was $275,000 a year. Because you gotta know how to fight that fight. You actually have to hire a consultant, take pictures of all the tower and all the equipment, say, yeah, that's generating about $10 million a year. So why don't you throw the town $250,000 instead of $25,000? Yeah, information is key. If you don't know the industry,
Negotiating.
you think you're getting rich because you're getting a check for 25 grand a year and you're not doing anything, you're just looking at the tower. But it's really worth way more than that to them, and they're willing to pay.
Matt, there's actually something you might be able to help us with. Last year, we, on our scoring sheets, each department had put their list of,
Prayer.
I don't know if they did it, but we had a list of all the
So I
requests.
made that, I made a spreadsheet
Yeah.
based on the things they submitted, and I summarized it all for the committee. You want that?
If we could get something like that, because otherwise we're gonna have, everybody's gonna have their own version of the sheet.
Yeah.
It may be helpful.
On to you after building facilities and a sheet, because we have to score some of the,
No, you need more blank sheets?
no,
Oh.
we need the names and we need to score.
For the electrical contractors.
I thought Lisa had that, right, never mind.
And actually, if you could forward.
Yeah, yeah, okay, we'll
Forward
get it.
Yeah.
them sooner.
Yeah.
But if we can get some of that, then get that just summarized, so that way we can do it.
It would be easier.
Even if it's just for the 23. So we can get that scored,
Yeah.
and then we can figure out what we're gonna do with their 5-year plan.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything? Kent? Ben? Shirley? Billy? Dick? Good.
Are you breaking that?
I'm wondering why it's not.
Don't break it.
I'll take it. Need help?
Motion made by Ellie, seconded by Mr. Vandenberg to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.